Today, I'm going to be showing you how to create R&B chord progressions that sound like this. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm back with another music theory video for you. This one specifically on R&B and on one of the most common chord progressions, the 2-5-1. This chord progression is used a lot in R&B, a lot in jazz, a lot in gospel music. I've covered it before on my channel, but today I want to cover it even more and really go in depth behind the music theory for this so you guys can understand it. I'm going to break it down in an easy way to understand, but there are some concepts to this that are a little bit more advanced. But regardless, by the end of this video, you'll know how to create a nice 2-5-1 chord progression. That's all I got, man. Keep this intro nice and short. Let's go. All right, so we're at a little bit of a slower BPM. We're at like 84, 83, somewhere around there. That part doesn't really matter. We'll go with C major to keep this easy. So to understand what a 2-5-1 is, we have to know what scale degrees are, right? So very simple. We are in C major. C is the 1. Then we have the 2 being D, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to the 1. So these are 7 scale degrees: C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. So if I was going to create a 2-5-1 in the key of C major, I'd be building a chord on D, then to G. So this is 2, 5 to the 1, right? Gone over this in a lot of videos, but just giving you an idea of what this 2-5-1 even means. So for this video, I'm going to show you how to build a chord progression using the 1 and the 3 of the scale. And then at the end of the chord progression, we're going to hit that 2, 5, and it's going to come back to the 1, and that will be our 2-5-1 turnaround. So we're going to build out on the 1, right? Let's build a chord. This is going to be a C major chord, and we'll use a 7th chord to keep it even more R&B. So extend the chord out. So skip a note, place, skip, place. This is the basic triad: C, E, G, 3 spaces here, then 2 spaces here. If we skip one more, you see we skip 3 again. So 3, 2, 3. This is a major 7th chord. Let's go ahead and bring the velocity down a little bit. Let's play this for about a whole bar. And then we're going to build a chord on the 3 of the scale, right? So the 1, 2, 3, which is going to be E. So this one's going to be an E minor 7th chord. Skip 1, place. You see we have 2 spacings here. Skip, place, 3. So it's the opposite of this one over here. 2, 3, and then skip 2 more. Place 1 here. So we have a C major 7th to an E minor 7th, and it's going to sound like this. Right, in its most basic form, it's a cool little chord progression. So these notes are all inside the scale. We're about to go get some notes that are going to fall outside the scale, but I'll explain why. That's going to happen in R&B, jazz, gospel. I'll try to keep this simple and explain it as we go. So these are going to be our 2 main chords that we have right here, right? But what I want to do is actually move this chord over like this. So these are actually going to play out 2 bars fully if we extend it like this, right? So we can have it like that, or we can create passing chords right here and over here. Remember I said I wanted to have this chord play, then this chord play, and then hit a 2, 5, back to the 1, right? But I'm also going to put a nice passing chord here because in R&B, gospel, jazz, you're going to get a whole bunch of passing chords and they just sound really good. So this is going to be the first passing chord we're going to build. This is not part of the 2-5-1, but this is just another way to build out a very common chord progression that you'll know. And these are all in their basic forms. We'll do inversions and different voicings later, but let's go ahead and build it out in its most basic form. So right here, what I want to do is actually place a dominant 7th chord. And I'm going to place a dominant 7th chord that's going to resolve nicely to this E minor 7th chord, right? Dominant 7th chords are super important in R&B as passing chords. And an easy way to build them is to look at the 5th of the chord that you're about to go to and build a dominant chord off that. If that didn't make sense, it's all good. I'm about to explain it to you. E minor 7th chord, right? This is the root, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th. The 5th is very important. I'll explain why in a second. Circle of 5ths is very important for music and music theory, and a lot of things are working with 5s, with the 5ths. We'll just keep it as that. Just know 5 is super, super important. We can go on a whole music theory lesson for that, but we'll just keep it very simple. We're gonna build out a dominant chord off the 5th of the chord that we're going to. So we're going to this chord right here. This is the 5th of the chord. Root, 3rd, 5th, 7th. This is the 5th. So let's take this over here, right? And I'll explain why we're going to the 5th, but let me just go ahead and build this chord out. So to build a dominant 7th chord here, we need to skip 3 spaces and place, then skip 2 spaces and place. So this is a major triad, right? And instead of skipping 3 and getting that major 7th, we actually take this note and flatten it, and we're giving it a minor 7th on top. So it's a major triad, minor 7th on top. 3, 2, 2 gives us a dominant 7th chord. So this chord's really high over here. We need to just go control down arrow like that. And then let's just listen to it. I'm gonna explain why we built this dominant 7th chord off the 5th of this chord over here. Again, you're starting to see notes that go outside of the scale. This is how we get that R&B feel, but I'll explain why it works off this 5th here. So let's just listen to it first. You can already hear that you want to hear that 2-5-1 bum bum bum, right? And it wants to go back there to actually bring this all up by an octave there. All right, so let's explain this dominant chord and why it worked building off the 5. So in music, right, I'm going to keep this simple when we're talking about theory. The 5 wants to resolve to the 1. Right? I'm going to try to not go off on too many tangents to keep this simple, but in any scale, major or minor, the 5 wants to resolve to the 1. So again, we have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So over here, this 5 right here, if I click it, the 5 is going to create a lot of tension. And then when I hit the 1, you're going to feel it resolve. Let's see. All right, play it down here. So the 5 always wants to go to the 1, right? So over here, what we did was we looked at the 5th of this chord right here. So E minor 7th, and the 5th is B, right? And we built out a dominant chord being B dominant 7th that's going to resolve to the 1. So what's happening here, this is a little bit confusing and it's a little bit more advanced music theory. So hopefully this makes sense. I'm going to try to explain this in the most simplistic way, but temporarily what we did was make the E the 1, right? I know this is confusing. We're in C major, so the 1 of this is C, right? So what's happening for a quick moment is we're making E right here the 1 temporarily. So what we're doing is having this 5 being B resolve to E. Okay, and I'll explain that in a second, but just imagine that this is now our 1 just for a second. I know it's a different scale, but I'll explain it. So let me show you what that means. So let's go over here and change scale highlighting to E major, right? And let's play it out. We have E, boom, 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 all of these right here that are highlighted white, back to E. Okay, so these are our 7 again. This is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, right? So E is the 1. Watch what happens. 2, 3, 4, 5. B is the 5. So 5 wants to resolve to 1, right? For a brief second, we made the E the 1, and we had this 5 right here, this dominant 7th chord, resolve to the E, right? Being 1. So that's why we have notes that are outside of the scale, because for a brief moment, what we did was actually change this to our 1 instead of C being our 1, right? I know that's a little confusing. Hopefully it's making sense, but that's what's happening. We're borrowing a chord, right? And if we go to the 5 right here, this is E major, right? I change the scale and we go B, skip a note, place, skip a note, place. This is the major triad, skip another note, boom. We get a dominant 7th chord, right? And if we go over here, that's actually, if we drop this down an octave, that same exact chord. So what we're doing is borrowing the dominant 7th chord from E major, and we're resolving it, putting it here and resolving to the 1, which is E right here, right? Hopefully that's not too confusing. You might be asking, well, what about minor? What's actually cool is if we switch this to minor, right? So we go E minor right here. We still have a lot of the same notes. This gets changed right here, right? And this one gets changed, and this one gets changed. The 1 and the 5 are still E and B. So I wanted to show you real quick, even if we're switching to E minor, the 1 and the 5 are still E and B. The 2 actually stays the same as well. Watch, let me switch back to a major over here. 1, 2, and 5 are still the same in E major and E minor. That's for another day because we could do a 2, 5, 1 into another scale and then come back to C, but we won't talk about that right now. But yeah, pretty much I just wanted to explain that. Hopefully it makes sense. So that's why this chord's gonna work here. This is still gonna be in C major, but you're gonna get notes that are outside of the scale. Most of the notes outside of the scale in R&B and stuff are gonna happen mainly from borrowed chords, but you're also gonna have things where you flatten and sharpen them for color. And then there's also reasonings behind the minor melodic and the minor harmonic scales that can explain it a little bit more. But for the most part, to keep it simple, it's because we're borrowing chords. All right, hopefully that wasn't too confusing. It probably was, but I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. If you want some melodies like this one and need them to be 100% royalty free, I got the perfect kit for you. The MIDI Suite has over 100 royalty free MIDI chord progressions and melodies that I created from scratch. Pain MIDI, R&B, dark trap, sad, and West Coast. Drag and drop the MIDI into any DAW and load up your favorite piano or sound. That's it. And don't forget, it's 100% royalty free. I'll leave a link to it in the description. Let's get back to the video. Now let's build out the 2, 5, 1. So all we need to do is go up to the 2 right here, which is gonna be D, and then go up to the 5, which is gonna be G. And remember I told you the 5 likes to resolve to the 1, right? So here in C major, the 5 is G, and we're going back to the 1, which is C. So again, that's why the 2, 5, 1 sounds so nice. So you're gonna ask, what type of chords do we build off this? Well, when you're in a major scale and you're doing a 2, 5, 1, on the 2, you're gonna build out a minor 7th, and on the 5, you're gonna build out a dominant 7th. So let's go over here to D, skip a note, place, skip a note, place, skip a note, place. Then over here on the 5, we're gonna build out a dominant 7th. So we're gonna skip here, place, skip place, skip place. You see that 3, 2, 2 again, which is a dominant 7th. Now, if we listen to it, it's gonna sound good. The only thing is we need to change up the voicing because we have so much distance from notes like here, here to here that it's just really in its most basic form and it's not gonna sound that good. It'll sound good, but we can make this sound way better with different inversions and different voicings. But let me just let you hear it in its most basic form. And I'll highlight where the 2, 5, 1 is actually happening. All right, let's hear it. Okay, so that sounds cool, right? But especially this note right here, it's so much higher than the rest that's just creating too much distance in the voicing and it just doesn't sound that good. All right, so now what we're gonna do is grab all these root notes here, duplicate them and bring them down an octave, control down arrow like that. And then now let's start to do different voicing. All right, so now let me show you what happens when we drop these 2 notes right here. So let's hear originally and then drop those 2 and watch how much better it sounds because there's not so much movement and our notes are closer together, which is a way that we could play it on the keyboard even easier than having our fingers very spaced out to try to play something like this. And also having our notes closer together just creates natural movement that sounds less harsh and less moving. So it's just real pleasing to the ear. But let's hear what it sounds like right here and then drop them down an octave. Okay, now drop these 2, control down arrow. Right? Sounds a lot better. Watch, let me show you one more thing you could do. Another thing you could do, let me bring these velocities down a little bit, is we can actually delete this chord and replay this chord over here if you want it, and you're still having in the bass a 2, 5 to the 1. There's just another idea you can get creative with. Right, if you don't want too much movement. I really like how that sounds. It's always one of my go-tos, but we can keep it basic like this. Go here, let's move both of these down. Then let's start to get a little bit of movement over here as well. So let's drop this down 1 like that. So we have a repeating D going over here. And then what we can start to do, either keep it simple like this, right? Or we can start to do some inversions. So this is a C major 7th. We can bring it to its first inversion. So all we're doing is taking the root note and going up 1. You can also bring it to its second inversion by bringing this root note and going up 1. So it's still the same chord, but now our bottom note is G technically. Like if we were to play it on the right hand and you see C is there, we would have to do that, and then you can get creative and maybe take these 2 and move them up and get them a little closer together. Maybe we could bring these two up. So we're kind of working backwards now, but let's just start to mess around with some voicings. Let's see what this sounds like. Sounds cool. Let's drop this a whole octave. Okay, what if we bring the F up here? Just to kind of highlight this. Like it lower. So this is more of like a low-key chord progression, right? There's not too much movement happening. Watch what happens if we bring this up like 3 like this. Let's see. So now we're in D sharp major. Okay, let's go ahead and bring this back. Let's see. So I like this. We'll change this to D sharp major. What I'm going to do is bring this chord back to its default here, and maybe just do the first inversion. Let's bring these two down. Okay. What if we brought these all down one? Sounds nice. This note right here creates a lot of tension, but if we just brought the volume down, right? And because when we play things, they're not all just going to be straight velocities like that, right? Especially timing as well. Timing's another thing. So if we bring this down and you hear it a little bit less, it's nicer. So really just have fun with these. Have fun with the voicings, have fun with different types of versions that you could do. Because to be honest, the 251 is very fun. The more you listen to this and understand it, you're going to hear 251s everywhere because they just sound so good and they just fit perfectly. All right, so this is pretty much like the most basic way to use a 251 chord progression. Since the 2 to the 5 brings you back to the 1, you can go more advanced with 251s and start to change keys, right? Because you're hitting back to that 1, so that's your new starting point. That's a whole nother video and a whole nother topic to get into. I feel like that would be really confusing to explain into this because you're going to be wondering why I'm no longer in C major and I'll be in another scale because I'm using a 251 to pass into a completely different scale and then another 251, right? Because it just restarts that 1 is that new starting point. And since you could see how powerful that 251 is, you could really turn around and move to any scale. But to keep it simple, hopefully this video helped out. Study the circle of fifths and why 5 is so important in music and music theory, and things will kind of start to click. Everyone's at a different part in their theory, myself included. So if you're just starting out, this is probably extremely confusing. When talking about music theory, it is fun, but it can be confusing. So I'm trying to make it as easy to understand as possible for really anyone that's watching the video. It's really like a whole puzzle piece you're putting together. It's kind of like math, honestly, and sometimes it can give you a headache, but when you start to understand things, it'll like piece together months worth of questions that you had, or even questions you had 2-3 years ago. You learned one thing and you're like, wait, and then boom, bro, it's like you unlocked all the info and like all the boxes unlocked. And I don't know, that's why I love it. It's just addicting to learn. But anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a comment down below. More R&B on the way. If you're interested in any of my R&B kits, there'll be a link to those in the description. Also, I have a link to my Spotify if you want to stream any of my beats on streaming platforms. That's all I got for today, man. Appreciate you guys watching. Till the next video, peace.